Welcome to the Faber Web3 Hackathon. I'm very excited to have you here. We're going to be having 2 amazing days of talks on IPFS, Filecoin, and Web3 in general. I'm gonna give you a brief overview of what's going to happen, and also kind of some of the rules and logistics. But let me also introduce you to Lukas from Protocol Labs, who will be co-hosting this session with me. Hi, Lukas. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. And yeah, super excited to have you guys all here. We're excited to welcome you to the 2-day kickoff and to the hackathon more broadly. We're super excied to see what you will build, and yeah, super happy to partner with Carlos and the Faber team to hopefully bring you a super fun hackathon where you will learn a ton, get inspired, and hopefully, you know, maybe this is the start of a whole new career in Web3. At the very least, I hope you learn a lot and you're getting as excited about these technologies as I am. So thank you.
Awesome. Okay, let's go straight to this first session. This is probably going to be the most boring session of all, because the other ones will be very technical and they're going to be a lot more fun to watch. But I just want to make sure that we're all aware of what's going to happen during the hackathon, how things will proceed, and that you have the best possible experience during this hackathon. Just before we go into the nitty-gritty, I'm very excited to say that we have more than 250 people participating in the hackathon. With more than 46 countries being represented, 16 time zones. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are at the moment. And we have kind of a geographical split. 46% are coming from Asia, 20% from Europe, 20% from America, 12% from Africa, and interestingly enough, we have like the third most represented country in the world is Nigeria, which is quite interesting, and 2% coming from Oceania, so Australia and New Zealand. Also, something that we found very pleasing is the fact that kind of 70% of all the registers have never submitted a hackathon project on DevPost. That's great, because part of our motivation to do this and what drives us to do this is to bring more people to build new stuff and to build interesting stuff and to bring them onto kind of the Web3 world. So the fact that we have so many people that never did this is really exciting. The next couple of days will help you kind of come to understand what's the Web3 and how to develop for it and how to start building amazing things. On the other hand, you also have some very experienced co-participants. The top submitter already has 56 projects submitted on DevPost, which is amazing. So I think there's a fantastic opportunity for you to learn from each other. So let me just very briefly introduce you to Faber and kind of give you a glimpse of why we're doing this. So Faber is a Lisbon-based venture capital firm. We like to invest in outstanding entrepreneurs who are trying to innovate at the intersection of science and technology, people that are trying to drive digital transformation and climate action. The firm combines, tends to be specialized, so we like specializing around specific themes. We like deep tech early stage startups, and to be able to cater to these different specialities we create dedicated funds with dedicated investment teams, and we create expert advisory networks around those teams so that they can kind of not only help us, but also help the founders build global companies powered by AI, data, Web3, or climate/ocean. So this is Faber in a nutshell, and I don't want to bore you more with what we are. That's not why you're here. But I would love to invite Lukas to also introduce Protocol Labs and some of its main products.
Yeah, totally. So thank you. We're super happy to partner with you guys. I think it's a really good match. You mentioned deep tech, and that's what we're kind of all about, right? So these technologies that you're going to learn so much more about over the next 2 days, kind of at the bottom two on the right-hand side, IPFS and Filecoin, are what we're hoping your guys will use a lot, and that I think can bring a lot of these new ideas to life in AI, in data, and beyond, just important data sets. IPFS, maybe super briefly, and Konstantin and Niki, who you will meet later, will talk about this in much more depth, is a peer-to-peer protocol making the web more upgradable, resilient, and secure. You can think of it as a peer-to-peer version of HTTP. So really, that's probably the best analogy. And then Filecoin builds on top of IPFS and is a decentralized storage to store humanity's most important information. And you can think of it kind of like an Airbnb for storage. And the crazy thing is, like, we launched the Filecoin mainnet in October 2020 and have since grown to 18 million terabytes of capacity. So if you think like you need some storage for your project, like, you're definitely in the right place, and there's tons of opportunity. IPFS and Filecoin are both open source, community-led projects with contributors from all over the world, and I welcome you guys to become a few of them. I actually work for a company called Protocol Labs, which is an open source research and development lab that builds protocols such as IPFS and Filecoin, and also a whole range of other tools and services that improve the internet. Yeah, once again, super excited to partner with Faber. I think it's a great match, and I'm excited to see what you guys will build with these technologies.
Fantastic, thank you, Lukas. Before we start hacking, let me kind of give you a little bit around the kind of the ground rules, do's and don'ts, and not just rules, but also some suggestions based on what we've seen in previous events. So first of all, you don't need to have a team. You can work solo. Having said that, we do have seen that diverse teams tend to be more successful. Teams that are composed of people from different geographies with different skill sets and kind of can look at problems from different angles, end up being kind of better at adapting to the different problems that they face. So just kind of a suggestion, if you can kind of put together a strong team with diverse individuals, I think your odds to succeed are going to be better. Also a note on Discord, make sure you join us on the Faber Discord server. Most of the kind of real-time and dynamic communication is going to happen there. You can go to kind of our official website at faberweb3.devpost.com. You'll find the link to join Discord there under resources. There are a number of other resources there as well. But on Discord, we'll be kind of communicating in real time, and we'll be able to support you more closely. Just a note to say that you are going to need to submit new projects or new additions to already existing projects. So something that you already have laying there for a couple of years and you haven't touched and you just want to submit now will not be accepted. We want you to develop new stuff. And if you're developing new stuff to things that you're already been working on, you need to be explicit about what you're adding and how that builds onto the already existing project. Otherwise, we won't be able to accept it. Having said that, we do encourage you to build on top of already existing open source libraries or projects. I think that 1 month is a good amount of time, but at the end of the day, we're looking for outstanding projects, and you're going to have you're going to feel like the time won't be enough. So don't waste that time reinventing the wheel. If it's already out there and if you can build on top of it, please do. That's what open source is all about. If you have questions, ask. Feel free to reach out. You can find the full set of rules on our website. As I said, faberweb3devpost.com/rules. Be sure to read them before submitting, making the final submission. We don't want situations where you have like this amazing project and you kind of think you have everything nailed down and we're very excited about it, and then we can't accept it because you missed some rule or you didn't submit something that you should have submitted. So be sure to read through them. A few more notes regarding your interactions with other participants and also with the Faber team and the Protocol Labs team. Be respectful. We're all in this because we love what we do and we love the community, and it's all about collaboration and building together. So abusive behavior will not be tolerated. If you need help because you feel like you're being abused or harassed in some way, feel free to reach out to any of the Faber team or Protocol Labs team member on Discord, and we'll be sure to help you. And then kind of probably the most important rule of all, have fun. I mean, you're in this to have a great experience, to learn, to experiment, to build awesome projects. So this is kind of pointless if you're not having fun in the process. So make sure that you have fun and make sure that others have fun when they're using your products. Now, talking about the logistics. So I've already mentioned the website. That's going to be the source of truth. So if someone tells you something about the rules or something about the process and it's not on the website, or it contradicts what's on the website is right. If you have doubts, ask us. If there's a mistake in the website, we'll update it. But the website is the source of truth. Again, Discord server, you can discuss projects, you can chat on the hashtag Hackathon chat channel. You can find a team if you're still looking for team members. I know that a lot of you still don't have a team. That's absolutely fine. We're going to help you set up a team. You may have a team and you don't have the idea. We're going to help you with that as well. But one of the places where you can get help with that is again on Discord. And then you have the Hackathon support channel where we'll be there to provide any support you need or answer any questions that you may have, both from a technical perspective or from a logistics perspective or admin perspective. So any of the moderators or admins can help you. All the resources and as I said, the invite to the Discord channel is on our website. Before submitting, again, I cannot stress this enough. Before submitting your project for the final time, be sure to check if you've included everything, okay? Read the rules again, make sure that the submission is valid. And also, if you want to be eligible for the business awards, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides, be sure to include your business one-pager. We're not looking for a business plan. We're not looking for a detailed go-to-market strategy. We don't expect you to know it all. What we want to see is a glimpse of how you see your project becoming a business. What's your vision? How do you want to reach the market? We know that you're just at the start. That's absolutely fine, but we want to have a glimpse of what you're projecting going forward. This is the beginning of the hacking period. The hackathon is open officially from now onwards. You can start submitting your projects from February 21st all the way to March 18. March 18th will be the last day. We'll then, both Faber and Protocol Labs will get together and select the top 10 projects. Those top 10 projects will be presented to the jury, and the jury will decide on the winners. We're expecting to announce the winners around April 4th. You should have already have seen the program for the event. If you haven't, you have it here. I'm not going to go into detail, but there are some amazing sessions coming up. Lots of really good information, both for people that are already active programming in Solidity or on the blockchain, but also for people that are just starting with the distributed web and Web3. I think there's a bit for everyone, so be sure to attend. I think the sessions are going to be really good. And part of the reason why the sessions are going to be really good is not just the content, is because we have this amazing set of speakers that are going to be spending some of their time with you guys, helping you in different ways. Lukas, do you want to help me here and kind of introduce some of the Protocol Labs speakers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, as Carlos said, a few really experienced folks who know these technologies really well and who will hopefully inspire you to kind of build your next project. We also, let me start with Ian there. He's the head of our recruiting team. And we have a panel tomorrow on career in Web3 and how to get started. And Ian will be able to share his perspective and discuss it with other panelists. So super excited for that. Konstantin, who you will meet in just a few minutes, is a startup operator at Filecoin and IPFS. And he will be introducing these technologies to you and give you a little bit of a tour and a demo across different things. And then Alison will join us tomorrow. She's a dev advocate from Australia, and she will do some live coding. So if you're interested in really getting into it and asking a few very practical questions, we have the session with Ali for that.
And then you have Tiago's co-founder and CTO of Polka Starter. Is going to do a presentation on the state of DeFi and focusing on what you can leverage to build on DeFi and to enter that space as a developer. I think that's going to be a really interesting session. And then we're going to have Pedro from Talent Protocol and Enrique from Dune Analytics. They're going to be talking in the same session as Ian about their experience of coming from Web 2 and having Pedro, who started a business on Web 2 and now moved to Web 3 to start Talent Protocol, and Enrique, who had an outstanding career as a developer and researcher in kind of Web 2 and more traditional companies like Microsoft and so on, and has now become one of the senior developers at Dune Analytics. So they're going to be talking a little bit about how they went from transitioning from one to the other and what do they see as kind of being the steps to be taken if someone wants to do that transition as well. Lukas?
Whoops, sorry, I was on mute. And then we have Ruben, who is helping coordinate our entire accelerator program. And Carlos will talk about this, I'm sure, a little bit. But the hackathon is really just the beginning of the journey. And we hope that many of you submit projects and then take those projects and like turn them into real startups. And Ruben will kind of on tomorrow talk about what makes a great pitch, right? So Carlos was mentioning the business one-pager. Ruben will add some color around that and maybe give you some ideas on like what are the questions to answer when you write something like that to just really develop a great pitch. Patric will talk about retrieval markets, which is kind of a deep dive on one specific aspect of Filecoin. And he is super knowledgeable about this, and that's just like a very technical session that we have later today. And then Niki will be joining Konstantin when we're doing the introduction to IPFS and Filecoin and answer questions and introduce these technologies. And then David tomorrow will wrap up and kind of talk about, broaden the aperture and like open the angle a little bit and talk about Web3 and the opportunities that provides.
Thank you, Lucas. So let me just very quickly go over the submissions guidelines. Again, this doesn't replace you reading the rules. I'm being picky about it because I want to make sure that you guys get everything right. But basically what we're looking for is a summary of your project features and functionality, understand what have you implemented, a non-private URL, so a public URL, make sure that the URL is public to the functioning application, otherwise we won't be able to judge it. Also include a demo video of the project, maximum duration 3 minutes. I advise you to focus on the first minute. That first minute is critical. You should kind of bias into what you've built with the first minute and then explain a little bit more in the last 2 minutes. Every project must have a README document with information on how to use it, how to test it, like kind of the main details of how we can validate that project. You must not use any third-party trademarks or copyrighted music. As I said, open source is fine, and we strongly incentivize you to use it, but anything that is trademarked or proprietary cannot be used. And again, it must be original work of the submitter. Again, for the business award, 1-pager with a presentation of the team members and backgrounds, business opportunity, potential market, and go-to-market strategy. Again, very high level. You don't need to kind of have all of these. You don't need to have all of these kind of already defined. If you need to define it better, we may be able to help you in the accelerator. So we'll be, as Lucas was saying, we're going to be announcing a Filecoin Faber accelerator in the next coming weeks. It's going to be a 3-month program. And we expect some of these business award winners to be part of that accelerator program. And there we can help you kind of polish all of these up and kind of create an amazing startup and go to market. So basically, and this is really important, be bold about what you're going to build. Try to make an impact, drive change. I think this is a really good opportunity to ignore the downside and just focus on the upside. You have absolutely nothing to lose by participating in this hackathon. Worst case scenario, you'll learn something, and that's always useful, but you have everything to gain. So you can really kind of go out there and kind of try to build the best thing you can build and try to make it as impactful as possible. To make sure that you don't waste your time, we have a pool of an award that's going to be split between all valid submissions. So if you submit a valid project, you're going to get an award. So there's really nothing to lose. So let's talk about the prizes. I'm going to be very brief about this. There's going to be 3 first places: first place, second place, third place. These are kind of the grand awards. We're going to have like 3 business awards as well. These can be accumulated, so you can win the first place award and also a business award, so they're not exclusive. And then you have, as I said, a pool of 15,000 euros in fill that's going to be split between all eligible projects. I know that Protocol Labs is also ready to kind of give some swag to the participants. Lucas, do you want to very briefly talk about that as well?
Totally, and you guys will see it. So if you engage and if you ask questions and kind of are on the Discord and do what you can to kind of help each other and all of that. And when we see some great engagement, you are eligible for swag pretty much immediately, and we will make that available to you by kind of sending you a code. And you can redeem that on redeem.protocol.ai, and you can get one of those nice t-shirts that I'm wearing, and there's a couple of other things there as well. So like, do use that, like, have fun with this all, right? Like, the money is the one thing, and it is a lot, and I hope that we have some like successful submissions here, but it is also about meeting all those other people. It's about educating yourself, and it's about kind of starting this journey that, who knows, could take you to, in a year from now, maybe when we do the second version of this, you'll be one of the speakers and you'll talk about the successful startup that you built in the past 12 months. And that's not just like some dreamy maybe scenario. Like, we see that all the time, right? So at Protocol Labs, we run a lot of hackathons, and I'm super happy every time I see a small team that like found each other in a random obscure hackathon, and then they grew and turned it into a multi-million-dollar business, or raised the funding to really keep growing. So this is really just the beginning, and with the Faber team, you have an excellent partner to kind of like help you on this growth journey. So I'm excited to see what you will build.
And I'll be sure to be very active because I want some of that swag as well. So last but not least, I'm just going to very briefly talk about the judging criteria. So we're going to be looking at design, both UX and kind of look and feel of your project. We want it to look good and be easy to use. Technical accomplishment, as I said, we're a fund that it loves deep tech projects. So we like good coders, we like good engineers, we like good code being done. So that's going to be one of the things that both we and Protocol Labs and the judges are going to be looking at. Novelty and originality. We want you to, as I said, be bold, create new things, be original, and kind of try to make an impact. So impact is another thing that we're going to measure. But as I said, creativity and fun, not just for you, but for the people using your project. We want them to smile when they're using whatever you develop. We want them to feel good about it. We want them to be happy. So all of these judging criteria have the same weight. And we're going to be looking at projects that can kind of hit all the marks on these ones. So without further ado, I think this kind of covers the basics. We're now going to have a much more interesting session with Konstantin about team formation for all of you that are kind of looking to set up your teams and to look for ideas. So I'm not going to bore you anymore. Thank you, Lukas, for joining for this kickoff. And I'm going to pass the word to Konstantin. Konstantin, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlos. It was a pleasure to hear all the insights about what is coming in the upcoming days. And from my side, I'm also happy to welcome everyone here and welcome everyone also to the team formation activity, which will be happening not directly here, but in the Gather Town. And let's just, I think we have a link somewhere publicly available, either on one of the next slides, or I will also drop the link to the channel right now so people can join and essentially have a great chat there. So our team formation activity is mainly in 3 major steps. You can see it already in the chat, and if someone can also
we can just skip to the next slide. Yeah. Yeah, or it's in the chat, or yeah, if you can, or Konstantin, you can also share your screen maybe.
Then just give me a second, but essentially what we'll be doing is Yeah, so now you should see my screen. You should also see the chat, and in the chat there were quite some useful links posted. So feel free, first of all, to fill the form which we provide. You have already the link in the chat so that everyone can be aware of who you are, what you're working on, which skills do you have, and then you will also be able to see everyone else's description, everyone else, all the other participants who join as well, and it will be way easier to find the teams together during the hackathon if you don't have someone already, which is totally fine. And once again, feel free to team up, collaborate on the fly during this hackathon, find new people. I was a hackathon participant maybe like 2 years ago or 1 year ago, and it was always exciting to find new people, new topics, and work on something which was never, which wasn't done before, or which I'm also just curious about rather than already have an experience with. So once again, first of all, fill the intro form. Let's have like roughly 5-ish minutes to do so, and then we'll have a gallery of all participants, and you can meet your team in GatherTown, and that's the direction where we'll slowly head as well while you're forming this, while you're feeling this by yourself. So
and maybe one comment for those who are watching it later, right? Because there is probably a bunch of folks for who this is too early or too late or something. Doesn't fit with the schedule. We will continue to make this form, this introduction form, available on the Discord. So if you're viewing this at a later point in time, still fill out the form, and you can still look at the gallery of participants. So we have both the asynchronous format as well as the GatherTown meeting in just a few minutes. So hopefully, just the fact that you're not watching this live doesn't mean at all that there's not a chance to still meet folks.
The links can be found in Find a Team channel on Discord.
Thank you for the additions, and I'm more than happy to meet you all after that in the GatherTown. I think I will continue to share my screen, if that's okay, with the GatherTown available for everyone, though for those especially who are watching us online, who will be watching us afterwards later on, but I'm more than encourage everyone to actually join GatherTown themselves. It's kind of a nice tool where people can navigate and see others. You have a lot of space to collaborate there. And let me just show it for everyone. So here it is, here how it looks. And essentially, this will be our tool for the communication for the upcoming time. I think we have around 30 minutes more for the collaboration and organizational means, and I will be happy to see you here in the GatherTown. That's or right. Later on for the team formation, we'll have multiple sources which are available for you through the time of the whole hackathon, and therefore you'll be able to find everyone async as well. Feel also free to drop the questions both in GatherTown or inside the Zoom call in which we are right now, so that once you join, you will have all the access to the questions, and I can answer them right now while we'll still have a bit of spare time for the team formation activity. Also, as far as I understand, the GatherTown will be for a long time available for us, and I would invite you to all join and explore all the different spaces which we have in the GatherTown. There are some, not only just a meeting space, which has a general access for communication and web tools as Discord and something else, but we also have a lot of useful information inside the GatherTown. While you're navigating, you can see all different browser chat events, some videos on quick storage, on quick start, and there will be multiple tools available for you inside the space to navigate and understand and learn more about IPFS, Filecoin, and different applications and use cases there. As of right now, I just dropped the link once again to be sure that everyone have it in the Zoom call. And yeah, now I think we may even think about stopping the Zoom for now and reconceive in 30 minutes, but generally I'm more than welcome you to just drop in whichever source you are interested in, and then we will be continuing with our main session starting at
we're restarting at 3, so 3 GMT, so it's now a 2:15 more or less. We'll be spending some time on Hackathon until 3, and then we'll restart at 3, so in 45 minutes.
Yeah. So for now, will we keep the Zoom running as well, or will we move everyone?
We'll keep the Zoom running, but just with the slide, the initial slide.
Okay, then I will stop sharing from my screen, and then you can put some table over there. Thank you. And you can definitely find me in the Hackathon for now. If you have any questions, any information you want to know about IPFS, Filecoin, about our current hackathon, what to do with your team, what to do with your idea, feel free to drop there and raise all your questions. I'll be happy to direct you in the best way I can.
Okay, hello everyone. We're back. So we're going to move to the next session, which is an intro to IPFS and Filecoin with Niki and Konstantin. I'm going to invite both of them to the stage.
Hey, Carlos, could you please enable video?
Sure.
Hi.
There you go. Hi, Niki.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, awesome. Excited to be here. Should we just dive in?
Go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right, awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Niki. I work on the ecosystem growth team with Filecoin and IPFS. And I'm just quickly going to share my screen. Feel free to post any questions on the chat. We will get to them at the end of my talk.
And in the meantime, I will try to answer or point you to the data if something is urgent on the Q&A. So feel free to also drop any questions there.
Yeah. Are you able to see the right slide? It says Introduction to Filecoin and IPFS.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So I'm going to cover a few of these things.
Sorry,
that you...
Niki?
Yeah?
We see the presenter view, not your...
Okay. Hang on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it now?
Right now, we see the agenda without the presenter view.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so let's quickly get started. So we are first going to talk about the core concepts of IPFS and Filecoin. What are the building blocks that make it possible for Filecoin to be what it is, and how does IPFS work? And then we'll go through some of the tools that make it easy to use IPFS and Filecoin, and what are the different possibilities with the technology that we have, and I'll link you to some of the learning resources. Okay, so let's start with what's this current problem that we have with the internet today. It's centralized, and there's like lots of single points of failure. I'm sure you have seen a few times when either Facebook or a website has been down because their servers have been down. Information and data are really important, and they should be preserved in a way that is more robust and more future-proof than what we have today. So what's the alternative to that? We could have either a decentralized system, which is, a little better than the centralized version with multiple nodes, and or we could have a fully distributed system where all the peers are connected and it's effectively a peer-to-peer network. Yeah, so we are going to talk about how IPFS, which is the last one on the slide that you see, a peer-to-peer network that makes it possible for a decentralized, robust, a distributed, robust architecture to make our internet better than what it is today. Okay, so IPFS is Interplanetary File System. Now, why, first of all, what's a file system, right? Simple collection of different files and folders. And why do we call it interplanetary? The idea is that if you were on Mars and I was on Earth and you needed a file from me, it would take a very long time for you to get it. But if somebody on Mars already had that file, then it would be pretty easy and pretty quick for you to retrieve it. So of course, we don't have to be on different planets to use IPFS, but the idea is that with this peer-to-peer network, there are no central servers, and even if a small part of the network was to go down, the rest of the network will not be impacted by it, which is not the case in today's centralized version of the internet. So how does the internet today work, right? Today, say, before we get to the internet, so how are files stored on our computer? You store a file and you see the address of that file, which is on your hard drive. On the web, it's not very different. There, it's the location of another computer a few miles or a few thousands of miles away. And whenever you write down a URL in your browser window, you are effectively typing out the address of the computer from where you are retrieving the file that you want. In IPFS, we change this location-based addressing to content addressing, and we use something called a CID, and I will dive into what a CID is. So what's a CID? CID is not the location of where a specific piece of information is stored, but rather it's a hash derived from the content itself. So if you had the same file, it will always give you the same CID. And it can be reproduced anytime because you are effectively just running a hash function, and it's very quick and easy to run. And also, what it ensures is verifiability. So for example, if I retrieved a piece of information using the CID, when I get it, I will easily be able to run the hash again on the content I have received and make sure that it's the data that I had requested. So we use CID for addressing in the IPFS world as opposed to location-based addressing. Now we talked about files and folders. So what's a folder? A folder will be nothing but just a list of files. So it is just another a special type of file, and hence everything that we talked about, a CID, can just be applied to a folder, which is another file. So now how is all of this stored? Now, if say I had if I have a folder system, the type of which that you can see on the screen, so you can see that my main folder has a root CID. Now that folder is a file which has two references, one to a folder system, which is a folder which has 3 files that you see, and the other one has just 1 file. Now each of the 4 images you see, we have generated like a unique fingerprint. The content ID is a unique fingerprint. So every file will always have a unique content ID. Even if a pixel in any of these files were to change, the CID would change. Now, as you can see, you have 2 folders that are linked in the file in the folder above, and then it links to the CID. Now, and this is stored in a structure called the Merkle DAG. or a direct acyclic graph. That's nothing but just a type of tree structure in which the entire file system is stored. Now, for example, if we wanted to say move a file from one folder to another folder, we don't have to replicate it, because all we have to do is just move the CID from one file to another, and that's it. Like, you're done, which we call as deduplication. And I already talked about the verifiability because of the uniqueness of the hash that is generated, which becomes the CID. Our content is verifiable. So now we talked about how each piece of content is uniquely identified by a key. But how do we like actually make it possible that they are discovered? Like, how do we make these pieces of information move from one peer to one node to another? So now let's look at this, right? This is each node in the IPFS network, we call it a peer, and each peer has a unique cryptographic name called the peer ID. And information from one peer to another is sent via cryptographic encrypted channels. And we make sure that all of this is discoverable using something called a DHT. Now, how does a DHT work? A DHT is nothing but a distributed hash table. So all the nodes put together will have one will have the entire table, but not every node will have, every node will only have a part of it, not the entire table. So, and what will it have? It will have a list of keys and values, and all of this will be maintained by multiple peers. So when I'm trying to find a piece of information from a CID, I will reach out to the peers close to me on, hey, whether you have this, whether you have the file addressed by this CID or not. And keys and the peer will look it up in the part of the table that it has, and either send you back the content or figure a way out to actually find the peer where the content you're looking for is addressed. So each table will have either a content ID or a peer ID, and peers are able to add rows to the DHT, declaring either their peer ID provides a specific CID, and then how to connect to the peer ID. And peers can query from the DHT to find which peer is providing the content they need. Cool. So now we've talked about how we are addressing files in the IPFS system, and how we discover the content, how content routing works, and then. And now let's like zoom out a little and see, so what does the distributed system look like, and how can you do it? So for example, if I want to host data that I want to save, I can run an IPFS node. But if my node is down, if my data center is offline, then or my computer is offline, then that piece of data is not discoverable. So then I can choose to run a bunch of nodes and maybe a big infrastructure of data centers and make sure that the file is always retrievable. The other options are, we can use a pinning service like Pinata, which makes sure that they have a bunch of nodes running. And as long as that is up, your data that is pinned, that is available on any of the nodes is discoverable. And the other alternative is also that you hope that your data becomes viral or like popular enough, and it is stored by multiple nodes and always retrievable. And as long as the file is available even on a single node, it's going to be discoverable because this is a distributed network and everything is addressed by the CIDs. However, running an IPFS node does not guarantee that the data is going to be available. So this is a good way to good place to segue into why we need Filecoin. Filecoin is storage designed specifically for Web3, and it is fully compatible with IPFS and Web3. And it is built on top of IPFS, and it integrates with a whole bunch of smart contract chains like Near, and we are working on building bridges to multiple other chains. And this storage is verifiable via cryptographic proofs, and I'll get into more details about it. But these proofs ensure that once you store data on Filecoin, any of the Filecoin storage providers, then it's going to be there, and it's going to stick to the rules that you define for your storage deal. And there's incentives and also penalties for storage providers for storing or failing to store your data respectively. And it's the biggest decentralized storage network that we have, with 15 exabytes of capacity spread all over the world by multiple storage providers. And it's not run by a single company like a typical AWS or a Google Cloud with single points of failure, but it's actually a network of multiple storage providers. Okay, so how does Filecoin exactly work? So once you decide to store data on Filecoin, you will make a deal with one or more of these storage providers, and everything that we talked about, the CID, making it discoverable via DHT, all of that happens, and your data is stored on these DAGs, and it is stored across one or more of the storage providers. Once you store it, they provide an initial proof of replication that the data that you uploaded is actually replicated in their server, and it is published to the Filecoin blockchain. Over time, you have proof of space-time being shared, which is like a verification, like a message saying that, hey, yeah, your data is fine, and they're mandated to provide this periodically. Otherwise, there are penalties on not being able to furnish proof of storage. And you can choose what kind of deal you want. You want your data to be stored for 5 years, 15 years, 5 months, 100 years. It's completely up to you. And you can renew the storage deals and define the rules for it. So yeah, this is what I'm talking about, right? So you decide to have a storage deal. You can say, I want to store my data across 2 or 3 storage providers, creating backups. And since the cost of storing is substantially low, it's easily possible to like replicate data storage. You can choose to continue renewing your deal forever. And if you want permanent storage, that's completely possible. You club Filecoin with a specific type of smart contract, and you have permanent storage. Often we don't always need permanent storage, and we just want data for a few months or years, and you can code that into the smart contract as well. And by the way, IPFS is storage layer agnostic, right? So if you are using IPFS, you don't necessarily have to use Filecoin, but Filecoin works great with IPFS, and it's possible to do any sort of combinations that you like, right? You can choose to store data on like 2 Filecoin storage providers, have 2 deals running with 2 different storage providers, and upload it to the cloud, or just have one version on the cloud, one on a Filecoin, and have a Filecoin deal going. You can also decide to like move it at a later point. And because everything is like content addressed, it's very easy to move. So this makes it very modular, and you can choose to define your storage deals the way you want. And yeah, so that's it. So IPFS works great with Filecoin. IPFS is great for fast, flexible retrieval, and Filecoin gives persistence and verifiability and a guarantee that your data is going to be available depending on how it has been written in how the deal has been defined. So that was the section on IPFS and Filecoin. And Konstantin, are there any questions that we want to take at this point, or should we go on?
Everything is good so far. I think all the questions that are arising have been answered. Awesome, cool.
So now I will jump on to the tools that we have. I won't spend a lot of time in detail because we have a couple of sessions exactly to go through all the details, but I will talk about them briefly. So now we have talked about all the awesome concepts of IPFS and Filecoin, but it's kind of hard to directly interact with these protocols. So what we have is a whole layer, the yellow one that you see up there, called storage helpers. And they basically interact with IPFS and Filecoin and give you easy APIs and SDKs to make sure that the storage layer is easy for you to use and you can focus on building everything else related to your project or your application. Yeah, so, and this simplifies deal making, and it also ensures persistent and verifiable data for your application. So one of the services is Fleek. We love Fleek. Our website, hackathons.filecoin.io, is built using Fleek as well. And it's a super easy way to host websites on IPFS, and come on, everybody needs a website, no matter what you're doing. Yeah, it's pretty easy to use. It can be easily connected with GitHub, and you can add whatever settings you want, and it can be deployed to IPFS and backed to Filecoin. The other one that we have is called Web3.storage. It's for any type of data storage that you want on Filecoin and IPFS. Data is uploaded to an estuary node. It's an IPFS plus Filecoin node, and it also replicates across 6 storage providers around the world. So the different kind of models that we talked about that you could have, it's possible using, one of them is replicating your data across 6 storage providers, and that's possible with Web3.storage. Then this one is pretty special, especially designed for NFT developers. And you can back up any data using IPFS CID, and storage plus retrieval is free. Yeah, that like free storage is available to use this directly as part of your project. And it's pinned to 3 storage providers, and it's backed up to Filecoin with a redundancy of 5 storage providers. This is another one, if you want, called PowerGate. It's easier. It's for those who would like to have a more powerful interface with IPFS and Filecoin and tinker around a bit more. And we already have bridges to Near, and a couple of others are on the way too. So that was on the tools that we have, and we will have a couple of sessions, one by Konstantin, another by Ali, which get into the details, and they'll actually do a deep dive, and Ali will do a code along for NFT.storage and Fleek, and how to actually use those in your projects. Cool. So yeah, if there's anything I want you all to remember out of this session, it's this: all the amazing features that come with IPFS and Filecoin are at the bottom layer of the stack. You have all the different storage helpers, which can help you to write any type of smart contracts or use any of the different logic chains that are available, be it Ethereum or Near or Hedera or Chainlink. And we have something very special called Filecoin Virtual Machine coming up too. it's currently work in progress, but that will allow us to have programmable storage. And then it can have any sort of front end. It could be a Web2 interface or a Web3 interface. And I won't spend much time on this, but these are a bunch of ideas around different applications that are possible with Filecoin and IPFS and any other different tool that you choose to pick. And there's also a lot of, for inspiration, we also have our past hackathon winners published on our hackathon's website or in the Hall of Fame. There's a whole bunch of them, and you can take a look at them for inspiration and see what are the different ways they've used different technologies to come up with their winning projects. I'll post the link to it in the chat. And we love supporting developers who are building on IPFS and Filecoin. We have our Discord, Slack. You can find us on Twitter, on our websites. And you can also block office hours with one of our developer advocates. Konstantin is one of them, our superstar. And just like feel free to reach out and post your questions, and we're always happy to help. And that's it from me.
Awesome. Thank you, Niki. And I would just encourage everyone, if you still have any questions which were not answered yet, just drop a line in the chat, or we'll be happy to answer all your questions regarding to the IPFS, Filecoin. I think Carlos and we will be also happy to just generally guide you through the process of this hackathon, both here on the online calls or in the Discord channel. So we're more than happy to share all additional information. If you have any ideas on your hackathon topic, or you just have some questions or doubts how it will work the best, feel free to reach us out, and just we'll be happy to navigate you through the exciting world of Web3.
And we are handing out swag for anyone who asks questions.
So you have an additional motivation to be active during this hackathon. So are there any other questions which I'll be happy to answer? You can either drop them in Q&A or in the chat, and we'll be happy to elaborate on that. Thank you for the question, or thank you for the comment. I think, to my knowledge, it's already available on some repository. It's not development from IPFS or Protocol Labs directly, but I think there are already functionalities which allow you to download from YouTube directly on IPFS. And I will just look through the GitHub repositories, and you'll definitely find the solution already. But generally, I would definitely say that preserving some of the data or copying some of the data from Web2 to Web3 is just generally a good use case. And there are things which you want to store and you want to reliably have access over time. And that could be one of the definitely use cases for any project on a hackathon, just to build a connector tool which will allow a transition from Web2 solution, which already exists, to a Web3 and decentralized storage. So you're more than welcome. And yeah, just excited to see different projects from you. Also, feel free to look into our GitHubs, and there are a lot of projects, a lot of issues happening, and generally the IPFS and Filecoin GitHub is a great community where people can collaborate. It's open to everyone to contribute, and we also check a lot on people who are contributing. So by adding something you developed, if you found a bug, if you found a problem, feel free also to post it. It's really open and as we are a truly open source community, so we encourage everyone to participate. And we also have, if you are looking for something, we also have open positions in protocol labs, which you may be interested in joining during or after the hackathon. So we are excited to see new faces, new Web3 builders, and regardless of the path you're planning to take, either the startup or project, or it's just a training opportunity for you, there is a lot of people who are ready to help you on that way through your whole project lifetime.
Okay.
And in the meantime, we're waiting for Patric for the next session. If there are any other questions that you want to pose, now is the time while we wait for Patric. Okay, if there are no other questions, let's do a short break, 15 minutes, and we'll start the next session in 15 minutes with Patric.
Thanks, you all. Bye.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're restarting our sessions. I'd like to welcome Patric Woodhead from Protocol Labs. Patric's going to be speaking about Filecoin retrieval markets. And I think this is going to be a really interesting talk. So, Patric, you have the floor. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. Should I share my own screen? How's it working?
Feel free to. Feel free to.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just find presentation. Here we go. All right. Oops, wrong one. Okay, can you see my screen? And is it full screen for everyone?
Yeah, all good.
Nice. So yeah, my name is Patric Woodhead. I am the program manager for the Retrieval Markets Working Group at Protocol Labs. It sits in the research and development department. So we look at stuff at all levels of the research to development spectrum. And yeah, we're going to begin by just talking about what the Filecoin retrieval market is. We're then going to go on to where we are now. And we'll look at after where we are now, which is kind of, yeah, look at the state of the retrieval market at the moment. We'll look at what we want to get to, like the future state example, where we're aiming for. And then towards the end, we'll look at the Retrieval Market Working Group, which is a collection of ecosystem teams, network teams who are working in this space. And then we can have a Q&A at the end. Also, feel free to, if you like, raise your hand. Hopefully I'll be able to notice and we can take questions as we go. So yeah, I'll begin by just describing what the retrieval market is and motivating the topic. So let's just begin by looking at the internet. The internet is like a road network with traffic jams and crowded roads. And so in order to get content quickly, it's got to be stored near to the end user. To compare it to a more real world example, when you order a book off Amazon, you don't fetch it from where the publisher made that book or where it's initially stored. It comes from some distribution center which is nearby your home, so that they only have to drive a short distance to drop that book off at your place, and it can be done very quickly. And the same can be said for the internet. When you fetch files from the internet, you don't always fetch it from the origin server. You fetch it from what's called a point of presence, which will be a data center nearby your location. And these points of presence, they sit in what's called a CDN, a content delivery network or content distribution network. I think both definitions apply. And as we can see here on the right-hand side, we've got a kind of a topology, like a classic topology of a CDN. You've got like an origin server, and then you've got CDNs which connect to that origin server, and then you have individual users who can fetch files, content from their local CDN. For those who are aware of CDNs, the household names are CloudFront, Cloudflare, Akamai, Fastly. And these Web2 CDNs, they aim to achieve an average of like 25 milliseconds for a retrieval around the globe. But obviously this average is concentrated on retrievals in big cities, and it's got a long tail for more sparsely populated geographies, which we'll come to in a second. One more thing to mention here is that Web2 cloud providers separate the pricing of file storage from file retrieval. So when you upload a file to, say, Amazon S3, you're paying for the privilege of being able to store that file, but also when you then want to retrieve that file from S3, you pay per retrieval. And if you then want to put a CloudFront distribution in front of your S3 bucket, you'll pay extra for that as well to have the super fast retrieval. And that's this sort of separation of the markets of storage and retrieval is something which one doesn't expect when they first think about this. I feel when I speak to people, they assume you store stuff and then retrieval is kind of a given if you've actually stored that object. But that's not so much the case. And actually, it's expected that by 2025, the global CDN market, so retrieving stuff, is expected to be twice as large as the actual cloud object storage market, so storing it in the first place. And when you actually think about that in more depth, it does kind of make sense, because storing a file, you just need to store it in one location, whereas retrieving the file, you have to have this global network of data centers and points of presence, which are enabling users to fetch those files very, very quickly. So I'm now going to attempt to try and poke some holes into Web2 CDNs, because to motivate why we need a Web3 CDN, and in particular, why Filecoin is a good place to build a decentralized CDN. So here we have on the left-hand side, we have Web2 CDN performance worldwide at average time to first byte. And you can see that there's some, clocking in the top, you've got Azure at sort of 22 milliseconds. And going down to the bottom, it's pretty concentrated up to like 30 milliseconds. But if we then look in Africa, you can see that actually it's much, much slower across the board. And actually it's got a longer tail as well. But here, I think we're still seeing like quite condensed data. This is still focusing on a lot of retrievals that are made in big cities. And if we look at this table here, I hope you can see it all. You can see that there's actually a lot of geographies around the world and countries around the world which don't have a single point of presence in a Web2 CDN. So some of these are islands and perhaps it's not necessary, but others are quite big land masses. And we could be looking at some, quite big times to actually fetch files from such land masses. Like, for example, Central African Republic, we've got Greenland, got Sudan, so some quite big areas. And so we got to question why that is. It's probably because these CDNs, a point of presence is actually quite a big undertaking to lay one down. You have to make sure that the physical layer of the network of the internet is there and it's got a really stable electricity supply. This because it's got to serve a reliable source of data to everyone in that vicinity. So it's not just something you can set up and over a matter of weeks. So we've talked about geography, and now I'm going to just zoom in a bit on what Cloudflare referred to as AWS egregious egress. So this is how much they estimate Amazon is marking up costs for you fetching files from S3. So Cloudflare estimate that it's costing, it's an 8,000% markup if what a company pays for retrievals from their S3 bucket compared to what AWS is paying to actually serve that retrieval, which is a big markup. You can see down at the bottom here, it's smaller in these newer regions of AWS, but as they bed themselves in, they'll start to be able to create much more towards this 80x figure. So that kind of sets the scene of some flaws, I guess, with Web2 CDNs. I think the other thing to mention is just we're here to talk about Web3. We're here to talk about decentralized web. And so philosophically, I think if we want to build an end-to-end Web3 stack, the CDN is also going to have to become Web3 and decentralized. And that's also what we're focusing on here. So that brings us to this vision of the Filecoin retrieval market. And that vision is to build the world's best CDN by leveraging Web3 technologies. The first step in this process is just to try and get feature parity in terms of performance, cost, reliability with a Web2 CDN. And then the second step, I guess, would be to try and leverage the constructs and properties of content addressable data and of Web3 to perhaps outperform traditional CDNs in certain ways. So I'm going to go through a few of these now. First thing I've already mentioned, content addressable nature of the data. I believe that would have come up earlier in this hackathon demo day presentation. Instead of looking for the location of a file like a location addressed Web2 request, you're looking for, you say, I've got this CID and I'm looking to find the data for this CID. So if we look at this Web2 diagram, and let's imagine we've got 100 people sitting in an office, all trying to fetch the same video for a presentation that they're about to watch as a group, then they're all going to be making a request to this point of presence as they're trying to fetch that data from a location. Whereas in a content addressable setup, perhaps one person fetches it from a point of presence outside that office, and then others can start to share content in a peer-to-peer CDN with each other, saving a lot of bandwidth and a lot of internet requests and traffic by just sharing stuff inside last mile like LAN network. Second thing is deduplication, which I think would have come up earlier as well. So let's say 100 companies all store the same file in an S3 bucket and therefore in a CDN layer on top of that. Then, if that's a hot bit of content, then people are going to be requesting it from all of these different endpoints, all these different locations. But using content addressing, we can deduplicate that, and a point of presence could store that file once, or perhaps we can replicate it enough times to make sure that the performance of the network isn't compromised, but not have it appear over and over again in the same points of presence. Permissionless. So I don't know if anyone remembers, there was an outage of Fastly in May last year, and vast swathes of the internet went offline. And that's because if you look at this sort of hub and spoke mechanism, if one of these green dots disappears, suddenly people aren't able to access data. They aren't able to get hold of data from that CDN. But if we move across to this sort of Web3 network, peer-to-peer CDN, if one green dot goes offline and we've got a good replication of data between these nodes, then we're able to fetch data in different ways from different nodes. So we can have more reliability in the network, even through outages. Verifiability, because we've got the CID and we're getting data back, we can actually verify that we're getting back the data we want. In the Web2 CDN model, we're actually trusting that the file we get back is what we wanted, but who knows, perhaps these Web2 cloud CDNs are tampering with the data, changing it slightly, reducing its quality. Who knows what's going on? But in this case, we can verify that we're getting exactly what we asked for. Also, as I mentioned earlier, points of presence, they're going to be a quite heavy weight to set one up for one of these Web2 companies. With a Web3 CDN, we'd really like it if people could join the network with just spare devices, with their phone, with old laptops, anything which they can then contribute to the network to, they can earn Filecoin for the privilege of being part of this network. And we can connect up devices of all sizes, and this allows us to get into geographies which perhaps Web2 CDNs aren't able to. Crypto incentivized, as we've seen, if you set up a kind of crypto mechanism design system, people do tend to want to get involved. There's also the caveat that people will try and game the system. So any crypto incentives to build these networks, we'll have to make sure it's done in the right way and is incentivizing people to actually provide a really good CDN service rather than anything else. Market oriented, we hope that where there's a desire for hot content, nodes will spring up and people will start to provide content for retrievals in those areas based on just, the market. And this is also, I would say, a market for different products we built on top of the underlying retrieval market protocol. So would love to see an emergence of new ideas and technologies and products which grow out of this Web3 CDN vision. And then finally, smart redistribution of content. We hope that perhaps if files become hot in some area, that these nodes are going to be able to share with each other. Checking, no chat or hands up so far, so it sounds like we're all good. Cool, so that's the end of the motivation. We've gone through like some of the stuff about Web2 CDNs and where we could perhaps provide a better service. And we've spoken about what the vision is for a Web3 Filecoin retrieval market. Oh, this is a bit blurry, excuse me. We're now going to speak about where we are now. So we've looked at the big vision. I don't know how familiar everyone is with the Filecoin network, but here I've got in this diagram, very simply, we've got storage providers on the right-hand side. Storage providers exist in the Filecoin network and they are storing files and they're earning block rewards for storing those files. But of course, we need to be able to retrieve those files from storage providers. And at the moment, at Filecoin launch, the way that one had to retrieve a file was actually quite a heavy lift. As a retrieval client, this blue node on the left, you had to be able to set up a payment channel on the blockchain with the storage provider. And once you'd done that, you had to wait for finality for that payment channel. You would then be able to exchange vouchers for bytes of the file you wanted to retrieve in an optimistic fair exchange protocol. So this optimistic fair exchange means that the retrieval client would send, say, one voucher in exchange for 1 byte. And if the storage provider gave them that byte, they'd maybe send 2 vouchers for 2 bytes and then 4 for 4, building up trust between these two nodes which don't trust each other initially. And the reason it's optimistic is that at any point, the retrieval client could send some vouchers and the storage provider could just not return those bytes. And there's then no way to ensure that the whole file is transferred. With the way that Filecoin works, there's a protocol called GraphSync, which is used for this transfer. And the retrieval client can incrementally verify the file they're receiving to make sure that the storage provider is giving them the right bytes, even from the word go, which is really cool. And then after this whole exchange has taken place, the storage provider can redeem the vouchers that it's received for Filecoin against the network. One more thing to mention is that why are we doing all of this off chain? It's because if the retrieval client actually sent Filecoin to the storage provider, then it would be a transaction on the ledger and we'd have to wait for finality of that, which would take a lot of time. So this whole mechanism of setting up a payment channel and then redeeming vouchers is so we can do very quick vouchers for bytes in an off-chain setting before redeeming vouchers at the end. So that was where we are after launch. Launching in March, there's an addition to this network, which is the indexer node. So one more thing to mention on this one is that the retrieval client also has to know where a file is stored. And this kind of departs from the IPFS approach where you can use BitSwap to ask lots of different nodes whether they have a file, and then they'll ask nodes, and you've got that approach, that kind of gossip mechanism to find a file. In this initial Filecoin launch, you had to know exactly which storage provider was storing a particular file. But launching in March, we have this indexer node joining the network, where a retrieval client can ask the indexer node which storage provider has a CID, and the indexer node will tell the retrieval client, and then they can do the process as we've seen before. So we've got some measure of content discovery coming into the network. As we'll see later, there's other sorts of indexing which we're looking at, like content indexing. So how can we retrieve all files which are to do with cats? That's something which is not yet possible, and with something we're looking at in the retrieval market working group. This one, okay, it's starting to get a bit more hectic, these diagrams. We can see over on the right-hand side, we've got the storage providers we've spoken about and the indexer node. What we're looking to launch in 2022 is a whole new layer of retrieval providers, which are going to be lightweight nodes, as we've said, like mobile phones or people's spare desktops or laptops, which can sit close to the edge and provide retrievals for browsers and other clients. So there's suddenly, if we go back to here, there's quite a lot of it's quite a heavy lift to be one of these clients. You have to be able to do graph sync. You have to be able to set up a payment channel. Here, we want to move to a point where these retrieval clients can be browsers, and we can make HTTP requests for car files, which is a contented archive file. And then the graph sync could happen behind the scene. There's also ways we could try and get graph sync into the browser that we're looking at, and I'll touch more on that later. But I won't go into too much depth on this here. Just doing a time check. Okay. So yeah, this is the direction we're heading. We've got the storage provider layer indexing, and then we've got this retrieval providing layer, which is starting to put content closer to the edge. These have points of presence all around the world, and in many, and close to the user, and then taking responsibilities away from our retrieval client in terms of what it needs to be able to do. A browser likes talking in HTTP and can just about talk in graph sync if we start to go into the service worker and stuff, but that's a heavier lift. So, these retrieval providers are trying to almost provide an interface between our entry points to the internet, which is essentially the browser, and the protocol labs protocols like graph sync. Cool. Right, and now, so that's I've gone kind of through where we are now, and I'm now just going to talk through like end-to-end example just to try and pull all this together, because I appreciate there's a lot of things going on here. So yeah, let's take, for example, Sarah, who has minted an NFT, and she lists it on Nifty Bazaar and NFT Marketplace. Nifty Bazaar then upload this NFT media file, let's say it's a 4K video, onto nft.storage. And nft.storage stored on a storage provider, and they also will make it available in the retrieval network or the IPFS gateway, and a few other ways for you to actually retrieve the file. But yeah, it's essentially stored as a content address file on the IPFS network, or on the Filecoin network, which means we can put that into the NFT metadata and have that immutable link between the content and the NFT. Now, Nifty Bazaar has got a lot of users in Sweden, and they would like to make this NFT media file instantly retrievable to users so that they can maximize the chance of Sarah being able to sell her NFT. And Sven, who lives in the very north of Sweden in a very remote area, has just visited the Nifty Bazaar website. Sven clicks on this NFT and he initiates a browser retrieval. And so that's what we spoke about in those previous slides. The ability to fetch a file from a retrieval provider from your browser. He can send one to a nearby retrieval provider, someone who's spun something up in North Sweden. And the quickest win is if that retrieval provider is caching the file and can immediately return it to Sven. It's a very quick retrieval. In the case that the retrieval provider doesn't have it in its cache, a cache miss, they can use that flow talking to the indexer node to find out which storage provider might have that file, and then do that optimistic fair exchange protocol with storage providers and get the file back into his browser. I won't go too much into reputation here, but there's also, because everything's decentralized, even the indexer and the retrieval providers, we need to know how trustworthy they are, and if they provided a good service before. So there'll be reputation systems that will be sort of taking account of what's happening in the network and giving scores to each of these different providers so that we can get a measure of which ones are the best ones to talk to. And that goes for the storage providers as well down the line. Whoops. So the indexer might, before returning to the retrieval provider, which storage provider to look up the file from, might just cross-reference it with some reputation scores. So yeah, the files made it back to Sven. Then there's, of course, the payment mechanism. So everything is decentralized in this network. And one of the big areas of research in retrieval markets is who pays whom and how that payment happens. Does it happen in protocol? Does it happen as more of a sort of out-of-band monthly payment? That sort of thing. So in these diagrams, it kind of shows that Sven's going to be paying for a retrieval from his browser, which kind of makes sense if it's, let's say, a Netflix model where it's like all the content coming inside an application and you're happy to pay for let's say a 4K video. But if it's kind of a website approach, then you're going to be less happy to be paying for each retrieval of a file. And in that case, it might be that the payments are coming from the marketplace, and then even from the content providers to that marketplace. So there's loads of really interesting ideas that are forming around how we can do payment channels and how we can then resolve those payments against the Filecoin network once they've all taken place. Cool. So yeah, gone through retrieval markets so far. I see there's no comments or hands raised, so I'll continue on through. Yeah, we've spoken about retrieval markets, what it is, motivated the idea. We've spoken about where we are now, where we were at the Filecoin launch, what's coming soon. And then we've gone through this kind of example flow of what it might look like when we've got that future state sorted. I'm now going to speak about the retrieval market working group, which is the ecosystem teams who are working in this space on a day-to-day basis. The areas that the retrieval market working group focus on, and potentially could be areas of focus for those looking for something to work on in a hackathon, are the crypto economics of the retrieval market. That's something I just spoke about then, with how we can sort out these off-chain payments, but also looking at number two, potential block rewards for retrievals. There may be ways we could have sort of probabilistic payment lotteries where if you can prove that you've served a certain number of retrievals, potentially you could win block rewards for having done so. That's very much on the scale on the left. R is research, and then the bigger the letter, the more it is of research or development, essentially. We've got, so yeah, off-chain payment channels. I'll speak in a bit about a company which is doing some really interesting stuff there. Oops. Reputation systems, we've spoken about indexing, content indexing. We've got data transport and data transfer protocols. So looking at GraphSync, at BitSwap, at a combination of Filecoin and IPFS. It's what we call IPFS Filecoin interop, and what protocols that would involve in order to improve retrievals. Browser retrievals, as I said, the browser isn't that compatible with the underlying IPFS and Filecoin protocols, BitSwap and GraphSync. So how do we make browsers closer to the network? And then we look as well at kind of analytics of these networks as well. So just time check, I'm going to speak for another 5 or so minutes. I'm just going to run through a few examples of teams working in the retrieval market working group and what they're working on. So the first one is Myel. Myel, if you want to go to the website, it's myel.network. Myel is creating a decentralized content delivery network, scalable and peer-to-peer to suit the long-term needs of Web3 applications. In particular, they focused on the MyelPop node, which is a retrieval optimized libp2p node. And they've also focused on Myel.js, which is some code which sits in a service worker of a browser and then allows you to do graph sync between a browser and a MyelPop node in JavaScript. They looked into this and made some great progress and deployed a version of JS graph sync, but they wanted to go even further and they weren't quite happy with like the performance they were getting out of JS graph sync. So they're now working on Rust graph sync, and Rust graph sync can also exist in the browser because you can compile that Rust to WASM and then use that in the browser. And they're seeing some big performance gains in that case. So they're really focusing on this link between the browser and the first line of the CDN, of this point to presence, and some really interesting stuff coming out of their research. And I encourage everyone to have a look at their GitHub or their website to find out more. Or just get in touch with me and I can put you in touch with people who work at Myel. Second one I want to talk about is Magmo. So earlier on, we saw a payment channel that was created between a retrieval client and a storage provider. The problem with having a payment channel between every retrieval client and storage provider is that as the network scales, you have an awful lot of payment channels, particularly if it starts to become a peer-to-peer network where you need to have payment channels between every single pair of nodes. And that sort of order of n² payment channels. And also the payment channels are currently only unidirectional. So you'd have to have order of 2 n² channels in order to cover everything. So a company called Magmo, who they work on state channels. They've done loads of work with the Ethereum Foundation. They are now working on a payment channel manager, which essentially allows every node to just connect a payment channel, or to make a payment channel with this sort of bank node or payment channel manager. And then the payments are resolved over 2 steps. There can be multiple of these payment channel managers, just like in the real world, we have lots of banks, but it means that we can really reduce the number of payment channels in the network, because it would, this now scales sort of order of n rather than order of n squared, which is pretty cool. Chain Safe, they're working on content indexing, the IPLD web. So yeah, basically, can we have a Google search bar where you type something in and it returns all the stuff in the IPLD or stored on Filecoin or IPFS that is relevant to that Google search term. And they're also looking at other ways we can bring the browser closer to the network, looking at WebRTC and how we can have like a decentralized WebRTC protocols. WebRTC in its current setup does have to have what's called a signaling server, which is a centralized entity. So we're looking at ways that we can do WebRTC without the signaling server, which is really cool. And then recently, Protocol Labs has launched Filecoin Saturn. The aim of Saturn is to serve NFT media files to an NFT marketplace with very low latency, just like the example we saw earlier. And then also grow the Filecoin community by trying to get as many of these retrieval providers or stations out into the Filecoin network, and get people earning Filecoin for providing retrievals. And we're looking for distributed system engineers and full stack engineers to help out on this initiative, which is, super exciting. Loads of people working in this retrieval market working group. And in terms of a hackathon, there's loads of smaller tickets or tasks or ideas that sit in the heads or the GitHub repos of all of the people working in these teams. So feel free to reach out if it's of interest to you. And how to get involved. You can check out retrieval.market. It's the website which lists a lot of the projects going on. I need to update it with some of the latest stuff. There's also Retrieval Market demo days that happen every 2 weeks. If you're interested to hear from some of the teams, you can find us on Retrieval Markets on Filecoin Slack. And there's also office hours where you can come chat to myself or others involved. Nice. Well, I think that's my half an hour of monologuing done. So I can now open it up to questions.
Patric, thank you very much. Questions? Anyone wants to raise their hands for questions for Patric? While we wait for other questions, I do have a question for you. As I was going through your presentation, so do you have or have you thought about any kind of incentivization in order to establish storage in areas where the density of storage is low? So by that I mean it's very likely that some of the storage is going to be more focused in some areas than others, China or other regions, while in effect you may end up with the same problem that current CDNs have, which is kind of in Central African Republic, there's no one kind of serving that. Are you thinking about kind of different incentives or dynamic pricing in order to incentivize storage in those areas, or is that something that is kind of too complex?
Yeah, great question. We definitely have been thinking about that. It's still in the research phase in terms of how people could prove that they are serving something from a sparsely populated geography. I think the best example in the space would be Helium, who they are able to prove they have essentially building like a telephone network where you can prove your geography by how far away you are from other nodes using radio waves. So there's some cool ideas like that which we could reach for. to try and incentivize people to spin up these nodes, these retrieval providers in sparsely populated areas. But yeah, very much in the research phase.
Fantastic. In terms of timeline, you're talking about kind of reaching feature parity with current CDNs and Web2 CDNs. Where are you in terms of time-wise from that?
So yeah, we hope to get to this year like an average time to first byte of well under a second. So I think sometime in 2023 in terms of performance. In terms of reliability, that's a difficult one to measure because a Web2 CDN, they're able to control exactly the uptime and SLAs they need to reach. Whereas in our case, it's a decentralized network. So providing the reliability guarantees will be much more about how we can ensure content is replicated amongst different points of presence. And there is always a route for you to find content, even if nodes are going offline. So that's a very different problem in terms of reliability. We hope we could start to compete in that area, I suppose, 2023 as well. And then price, that will come down to the economic model that we reach for. And again, I hope that we can compete there because as we've seen, S3 are charging a lot for the egress fees. I think Cloudflare have come up with R2, if anyone's heard of that, which is trying to compete against these outrageous egress fees of S3. So to match R2's cost might be quite difficult. But then we have to remember that this is Web3 and people may be happy to, there are things people might be more happy to bend on if it's for a completely decentralized setting. Because it's worth remembering that these Web2 CDNs, they are the front line of the internet, and say Cloudflare is dealing with trillions of requests a day and logging all of that activity. They have an incredible knowledge base and kind of role and responsibility in the internet. And is that something we want we want to have in the internet of tomorrow?
Just a follow-up question from there, and since you mentioned Cloudflare, as we both know, Cloudflare has made quite an impact in the world of CDNs, and they've been very innovative when it comes to kind of implementing new protocols and new ways of doing things. Is there a world where the solution for the CDN kind of problem is kind of an hybrid one, where you have kind of maybe Cloudflare doing part of the work on top of a retrieval market, or the other way around? Is there a vision for that?
Yeah, I mean, in all the conversations we have, using Cloudflare comes up quite a lot, and a few of our ecosystem teams do use Cloudflare for certain things, but not other things. So it depends what you're trying to optimize for. If you're trying to solve one particular problem, it can quite often be helpful to use Cloudflare as a crutch to then solve this problem. But we do try in general to not lean too much on Web2 CDNs when trying to build a CDN, because it would undermine the whole process. Of course. Having said that, they are very useful for a lot of things.
Of course. Any other questions from our participants? Don't be shy. If not, Patric, anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, all good. I just hope everyone's having a nice day and enjoying the presentations. And yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for the presentation. It was really great. So we're now going for another break. We'll be back in 20 minutes. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Cool, thanks, bye.
Thank you, Patric. We're back. So for our next session, we're going to be talking about where NFTs matter. And we have Konstantin back for this session. I think this is going to be really, really interesting. Konstantin, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Carlos, and welcome everyone again from my side. I will be here with you today for the next 30 minutes approximately, and we will talk about the NFT topic. I believe NFTs are generally super exciting as a field of research, as a field of what will be next, and it's definitely one of the hot topics already as well right now. So without further ado, let's start into. First of all, what we will be going through today. There'll be 7 multiple points, starting from NFT core concepts, NFT properties, and NFT anatomy. Then we'll investigate into existing and new application areas, available tools, and where to learn more about NFTs and about IPFS and Filecoin for better their utilization. But this session is designed in order to be motivating for you as a participant to come up with the new projects connected to the NFTs. And I'm generally open to any kind of questions, so feel free to post them in the chat. And closer to the end of the session, I will touch on base on those as well. So feel free to also put the questions directly in the chat, and we'll see if I will be able to also manage them during the talk. So without stopping, let's start with the NFT concept. So first of all, what's NFTs? NFTs are non-fungible tokens, where non-fungible means that anything only exists once and cannot be easily replicated with an identical item. If you think, for example, a guitar, which is signed by an author, it becomes an authentic, and there is only a limited number of copies in there. So this is kind of the same with non-fungibility of tokens, where each single token is unique and couldn't be easily replaced with something else. Secondly, the token itself, for us, it's a record of information, a record in a blockchain system, and it provides you with a different functionalities, such as ability to perform an operations. So starting with an NFT simple, NFT simple is essentially a unique non-interchangeable unit of data, which is associated with a digital or physical asset and could be stored on a digital ledger, such as blockchain, and could be owned, sold, and traded. That's what it means for us as developers. So for us, we are thinking about NFTs as a completely new type of file format. It could be essentially anything, and it's native to the blockchain system which we're using. It's becoming a native primitive, enabling us to use it for different functionalities, enabling us to store different types of data, but it will be always working in the same way as we expect, regardless of what's happening inside. The best application of it is, or not the application, but rather the way to manage the NFT in this case is mainly by smart contracts on the chain, which allow us to do multiple automated systems or solutions and come up with the different use cases based on what you exactly want to do. So in order to understand what we can build with NFTs, it makes sense to think from the properties perspective. What properties does an NFT has? So there are 6 properties which kind of define what NFT it is, and they are uniqueness. NFTs are provably scarce. They have a guaranteed ownership. They're transferable, they're fraud-proof, and they're indivisible. And let's dive into each of these properties in detail in order to have a better understanding how they work and which use cases do they bring up to us. So first of all, the uniqueness. Uniqueness is essentially a representation of a digital object, and it could be either a digital copy of a physical product, or it could be completely digital, meaning it doesn't have any replication in a physical world. So the property of uniqueness gives us multiple primary uses. Obviously, we already have right now art in all its forms available for everyone on the web. NFTs allows us to also store it and replicate and validate that it's unique. We have it, and there is no such copy as the one we have on our ownership. On the right-hand side, you, for example, see Ether Rocks, which was one of the first NFTs ever created on Ethereum network. I think there is only 100 of those, and there is no way you can create a new one. So owning those are kind of a owning a history of Ethereum, but also they are quite expensive at right now on the market. So it also represents some digital value. Though not only art in all its forms is the main use of NFTs, it also could serve great for validation of intellectual property and representation of a legal agreement. Anything from legal contracts, insurance contracts, and so anything which needs to be unique and tailored to a specific person could be also represented by an NFT. So the next element is provably scarce. This allows us to, first of all, trace the origin of NFT. We have accountability on NFT, and we can control the supply of the NFT we created. What does that mean for us is that we, at any point of time in the blockchain, we know how many NFTs there are already created. We can trace who created a certain NFT, and we can account and control the production of them. What gives it us as an opportunity is mainly the collections, which are already have a broad representation in the blockchain, and everyone kind of see it as a use case. Also, the limited editions are the use cases, but traceability also gives us a huge potential for the legal market, where you need to be sure where a certain item comes from, or what are the certain properties and why they are inherited from this specific contract. The next quality is guaranteed ownership. Guaranteed ownership in this sense means that the ownership features are inherited from the blockchain system on which the NFT is being stored. Mostly it will be somehow either ERC token straight away, like ERC 721 or 1155 standards, or it will be just generally some standard which everyone inherit and replicate. So it always have the same properties and we know how to interact with them. So together with this, we can also provide the data verification on-chain, and we can verify that a certain NFT belongs to us and all the information is valid and could be traced by anyone on the chain. It also serves as a digital proof of the asset in many cases. And for example, Uniswap V3 right now uses the NFTs to showcase the amount of money is tagged for yielding. The primary uses of guaranteed ownership property is definitely DeFi applications and all its variations, where you need to be sure that you're owning something. DeFi is the first place where it could be used. All other legal use cases, and one interesting case in the real world that's happening right now is collateral NFTs, where NFTs are being considered as a digital asset. It could be used for you to take the loans, take the money from the physical banks, and maybe used for a mortgage and some other financial instruments. The next element is a transferability of an NFT. As NFT becomes more and more widespread, it also becomes a new medium of an exchange. It's ownable and tradable, and therefore all kinds of open markets are appearing to supply demand, to support the supply and demand of NFTs and enable users to trade it and find the way to exchange them. So primary uses there are obviously the asset management with on-chain record, where you want to be sure that a certain item belongs to you on the chain. You have your ownership or it attached to your wallet, and any kinds of applications where you want to be sure that you have something and you can trade it. That's where it becomes super important, and that's where a lot of use cases appearing for the NFTs. As I already said, there are a lot of also IP rights representation. For example, you can think about the property management through the NFT as a use case, where you can have an NFT of your legal contract or your rental contract, and then transferring it on chain automatically also transfers, or you can sell it on the chain, but all the records of the property and the history of it would be recorded, and therefore ensuring your security, and you effectively can control your property through the blockchain. And the next item is the fraud-proof quality of an NFT. Essentially, security features are also inherited from the blockchain, where you have your own wallet and only you have the access to it with your secret password. And that's everything for managing the NFTs is also dependent on your wallet and your access to it. So no one can directly steal your information or steal your NFT without you being in charge of that, or your information being stolen and misused. But generally, all the security proofs which you have on blockchain also effectively being represented in the NFTs. You store all the information on chain, and you generally manage your NFTs through smart contract operations. Primary uses here are as well asset management and DeFi applications, where you need to have an additional letter of security and understanding for others how certain NFTs work and deal in the real world and in the digital world. And the last item is indivisibility, which also guarantees you that if you have issued, for example, 100 NFTs, you will have 100 NFTs by the end of the life cycle of a blockchain. So here we are having also indivisibility allows us to create NFTs which are ready for collection. They by design would be able to retain the same value or retain the same properties as they were intended by the author. And also they provide there are new ongoing trend happening right now with fractionalization. While you have an original NFT which is maintained to be indivisible, you can now fractionally have a subcontract which enables multiple users to have a piece of your original NFT, which could have many great use cases. For example, real estate management, where there is an NFT which represents a whole house, and fractional NFT ownership could be a representation of owning a flat inside of a house, while you can use all of the features of an NFTs to actually manage your rental property, lend it, and do other things which are common to be done in the real estate world. In order to, the next step of understanding how to work with NFT is essentially understanding how it's built inside. And under the NFT anatomy, I mean not the image which is provided by Alibaba with different NFT systems, but rather the general NFT on the blockchain consists of three main elements. There are assets, there is metadata, and there is a smart contract which allows you to manage it. Let's go step by step. When we create an NFT, we really need to think about where we store the data, where we store the asset. There are a lot of examples on the web where people were misusing the initial NFTs. For example, there is a very common story of neither confirmed rug pull story, where a guy sold some NFTs with digital avatars on the left. But the problem was that over the last time, or he decided to change the NFTs in the background, and where the NFTs were pointing initially were just some web address. And he switched all the NFT avatars of NFTs some people bought and were owning to just images of the rugs, which was unfortunate for the buyers, but they couldn't do anything about it since the record of the NFT was already fixed on the blockchain, and the pointer was to a random website where any person could change the object to which the NFT is pointing on without the control of the owner. So a great story to learn is do not record assets as the pointers to the website on the server, and this opens us to a question: what's actually the way to store the NFT in order for it to be immutable and others will not be able to change it. So we want to have a content persistency for an NFT, but traditionally, all traditional web links in the internet tend to be rotting. An average lifespan of a link on the web is around a year. So there is no consistency. If a certain service provider stops working, then you don't have your server anymore, and the link pointing to your asset is actually dead, and you cannot do anything about it on the blockchain because the record is still there. If you think about the other opportunity, like storing the data directly on the chain, you can unfortunately run into huge costs of actually storing data on chain. For example, for Ethereum network, to what I researched last time was that 1 megabyte of data to store on Ethereum was around $55,000, which is definitely not a solution for an art itself. And rather than storing the data on the chain, you would prefer to link the content to the address somewhere and store the original data off chain, but the pointer inside the NFTs. Therefore, you want to have not a traditional web link where the address is, but rather to have a content-based addressing, which is IPFS. And I believe many of you already have heard these sessions beforehand, which were explaining how IPFS works in more details, and I will dive deep during this session. Also, the off-chain storage could be persistent and immutable. Therefore, by using IPFS and Filecoin together, you can ensure that the storage, the item which you were uploading for an NFT will be stored permanently till the lifetime of an NFT you have created. So thinking and talking about the CID, which is the main content identifier within an NFT, it's a label which is used to point to material on IPFS. I will not dive deeper, but just as a reminder, CID generally doesn't indicate where the content is stored, but it's providing a unique fingerprint to the content inside of an item. Therefore, when you search for a CID inside IPFS network, you will automatically see all the locations where the file is stored, and you can retrieve it from either the closest or the fastest server to respond. And the benefits of CIDs for storage are obviously the unique fingerprint, which allows you to retrieve the data regardless of knowing or not knowing where it's located. It's short, also regardless of the size, which helps with the costs of storing something on the network. And it can be stored and sent over the network in a compact binary form. In the very last CID line, which you can see, is exactly one of the simple CIDs which you can retrieve over IPFS. And it's actually always the same length and the same usability and functionality for any use case. I will put this link later on, or we'll share a presentation with you for you to play with CIDs, but essentially CID has also the gateway to see it in the browser. So once you have a CID, it's not mandatory for you to always have an IPFS node running for you on the background. You can also see it through the gateway on the browser and use a standard HTTPS link to actually view it without a complexity of running some nodes and blockchain on your own. Then let's speak about the metadata. Metadata for a CID is essentially details of what content is being stored. Typically for NFT, you want to store a JSON file with some description inside of it. And here's an example with name, description, and image being stored on IPFS, which is attached to your standardized token as an NFT on the blockchain. So typically a person would first want to use standard schemas to define an NFT, such as ERC721 or ERC1155 would be a good starting point. But if you're developing your own NFT collection, you may want to expand these standards further for your personal use cases, for example, to enable ticketing or some other functionality which you may come up with. Last but not least, the NFT is enabled and managed by the smart contracts. You run an NFT to you run a smart contract to create an NFT on the blockchain. You use it for minting, transferring, and managing. And there are two types of smart contracts which could be used within an NFT. It's either for managing NFT externally, or there also could be smart contracts inbuilt inside an NFT, which will allow some new functionalities and enable owners who have a certain NFT to do tasks which were not possible for them to do beforehand, such as, for example, management, voting, or, for example, it will open for them a door to a ticket or to a gallery, which could be a great functionality. So the next step, I'm watching on my time, we are still good to go. Actually, minting an NFT is super easy and super, super fast. I will show some slides with the code, sorry, and bear with me for that. But as opposed to the image you see right now, the level of excitement, which is very, very short when you start working on an NFT. In reality, it's only within 2 minutes you can already create an NFT, and there is no hard technology which is standing behind that will be a roadblock for you to develop your own NFT. In order to create an NFT, there is a really good tutorial with Minty, which you can find on IPFS documentation. But generally, in order to create an NFT, you first need to have an object with details which you want to mint as an asset. Here, for example, I want to mint an interplanetary travel ticket. And then I install and deploy the Minty. The documentation tutorials will again be available for you after the session, but generally there are only few lines of code which you need to use, and then you need to deploy a local environment which will replicate the blockchain, and essentially then you call a function to mint an NFT, and it will be recorded on the blockchain, and you will have an NFT being created. It's actually as simple as that, and there is no fear that should be coming from your side that it's a complicated tool. There are so many tutorials available online, and we encourage you to play around with it to see that actually it's nothing complicated. Also, there is a lot of blockchains which allow you to use a testnet, so there will be no complexity at all to also play with it on the testnet first, then before coming on the real mainnets of the different blockchains. So for the last session, let's talk about what are the existing and what are the opportunities for the NFT space. There are already existing a lot of different projects like different digital collectibles, NFT marketplaces, NFT games, virtual spaces, and NFT domain names. And this all is booming right now, but I personally believe there is way, way more available for people in the NFT development world, that it's not only this which will be the main use cases in the upcoming future. So this part is solely for the purpose to inspire you to build your exciting projects during the hackathon, and feel free to use either any of the use cases which I show right now, or generally think of that as a more of opportunity to come up with a unique idea. Most of these are not yet fully realized or not realized at all, but I believe that's where the future of the NFTs will be heading. Let's touch up on a few of these elements. I believe a lot in NFTs as a replication of a physical object or a replication of a contract which was signed in physical world, and therefore all the legal field and document digitalization will be having a great opportunity to be realized as an NFT technology. For example, NFT could replicate the real estate documentation, it will replicate the ownership of a house, or it will be a replication or representation of your insurance, where a smart contract could play a role of a validator. And essentially, if you have insured for your flight delays and the flight got delayed and that's available information online, you'll be automatically paid and reimbursed for these delays. So it will be a completely automated system of insuring and healthcare systems, which is awesome. And I believe that's the future. I also see a lot of potential for intellectual property rights. There is much to do still with understanding how we lend an NFT, how we share an NFT, and how it could be represented as a legal document in the real world. But there is more and more standards which are coming up, and people start to adopt the NFTs as their main source of knowledge or information, therefore creating an NFT as a source of digital proof would have a more adoption. And we already have this DocuSign where you can have a digital signature. I don't think there is many more steps needed to have fully digital documents as NFT on the market being available as a final solution for a user. Some of the gaming use cases which I find particular interest in, and I personally play a bit, so there is a lot more use cases also coming to the gaming industry or to the metaverse industry. I see a lot of opportunities for the NFTs to become the source of cross-platform exchange and storage, where it will essentially decouple the progress of your particular story, game, metaverse, or something else, and you will have it stored on blockchain and could be used on any tool, on any computer, on any phone, becoming such an ultimate storage of information about something you're doing within the digital world. There are also opportunities for doing global achievements minting, where you see some simpler implications, but representing some awards or results. This could be just a great tool to showcase. And minting as an in-game create opportunity is quite a opportunity right now for pay-to-win games, where minting could become a new layer of upgrading certain functionality. And as well, minting generally of an NFT of an object within a game can also open a huge opportunity for creating marketplaces for the games which were not originally defined to have a marketplace, where blockchain could serve as a marketplace, and exchange of a certain NFTs will enable you to have in-game storage transactions. What are the available tools? I would not spend much time on that from perspective that there was already a session from Protocol Labs on which tools are available for you. But generally, I would say when you're working with an NFT, you want to start with a storage helper. This is to simplify your deal making and avoid playing with setting up your IPFS and Filecoin nodes, where the storage providers or storage helpers such as NFT, Estuary, Textile will help you to do the deals with IPFS and Filecoin in a single call. You have seen maybe these slides already or similar, but I encourage you to look at the NFT storage and Web3.storage to manage your NFTs. And by that, you will ensure that you are storing the data which will be available for the lifetime of an NFT. And secondly, it will be also very easy to call through an API to use these tools without a hassle. Well, an additional benefit is that both NFT.storage and Web3.storage provides you with a free terabyte of data to be used and to be stored. Therefore, any starting project on the hackathon essentially has the endless data to tinker during the hackathon, and we are more than welcome to help you setting those up, but it's essentially as easy as few clicks on the browser and you have your API key, which you can call from Web3 storage with and essentially connect to the IPFS and Filecoin. Just to end this topic, I would say that the blockchain is the Louvre, as quoting one of the authors on the Twitter. We are trying with an NFT to capture the value of the internet, and there is so much to capture and so much to link in the digital and physical world that there are endless opportunities for NFTs, and we right now see only a fraction of those already available on the market. So that was Konstantin from Protocol Labs, and I'm more than happy to answer all your questions right now in the chat or later on, and thank you all for your attention.
Konstantin, thank you. I think you do have a question, and if you want to address it now.
Mm-hmm.
I
have one question which I see on the chat here. Can you explain more on renting NFT and monetizing it after rent period elapses? Then the digital asset goes back to the owner. Is it really possible? I definitely feel that it's really possible. And as I was explaining with smart contracts which are inbuilt in NFT, they could be sort of validator which will automatically transfer an NFT after a certain time elapses, which was defined by a contract. It could also be in a more complicated system, and that's right now being developed, where you will have an intermediate lender who can use your NFT, but you will be still remaining as its owner. So that is an open topic right now, and there is a lot of awesome development happening in the Web3 world. Therefore, I'm encouraging you to actually have a look at what's happening and give a shot by maybe trying to build your own protocol, which could be used by many other people, and you'll become one of the fundamentals of the NFT world. Thank you.
Thank you, Konstantin. I don't know if there are any other questions on the NFT topic.
I think there are some links which will be available for you all the time, and I will be happy to give you the stage, Carlos, at least for the sharing.
For a very short time,
yeah.
As I'll be passing the ball back to you. So now we're going to have a panel with some previous hackathon winners. They'll be joining you on stage now. And Konstantin, I'll let you moderate and introduce the panel.
Awesome, thank you. Would you mind putting up the slide, if you can, for the sharing, so that it's not dependent on me?
I'll do that.
Awesome, thank you. And in the meantime, I'm more than happy to welcome two teams which are accompanying us on this session for ideation and project opportunities. So here will be two teams, which is Splice NFT and QSTN. We were announced that there will be Orrin and Emily coming with us, but I see more people, and I'm more than happy to generally give a stage to all of you. I will encourage you to inspire our participants of the hackathon with a short pitch on your project, give the details, how you came up with it, and then maybe have a short Q&A session on the most on the questions which will be raised by our participants. I'm also super curious to hear from you what brought you to the NFT space, or just generally what brought you to the Web3 space, and if you can answer a bit on why what was the most exciting thing you're looking for in the NFT space right now, and what may be one thing you would love to have, but it's not yet there in the Web3. And the stage is yours. I will give a floor first to the team. Do we have slides available? Sorry.
I have slides if you want me to put them up.
I was looking for the slides from our side, but if you have something to share, definitely feel free to do so. And yeah, then maybe we can start with the team Splice and then with the team Quinn.
Hi, so my name is Emily Wheel, and a little bit about me. I have a background in startups. I did some work in finance, but mostly I've been a generative artist for some time. Before NFTs, I was building installations that responded to real-time motion for stores and hotels and brands like Chanel. Let's see, I worked at a startup in crypto in 2017 to give you some sense of how I got into Web3, and had been keeping my eye on the space. And then sometime last year noticed, oh my gosh, look at NFTs and what's going on in art. And that's a convergence of so many of my interests. I got to get in it. And so signed up for a hackathon to meet other builders. And that's where I met Stefan. So we are going to talk about a project today that is from the hackathon, and it's called Splice. So Splice lets you take an NFT that you already own and seed a new NFT. So in its current iteration, you go onto Splice, you look at your collection, you select an NFT, you select a style from a generative artist. We extract its metadata, apply the style, and the output is a unique banner that is an NFT that you can use on Twitter or on Discord. And now I will hand it to Stefan, who will give you a glimpse of the site.
Thank you very much, Emily. I think you already described very well how Splice looks like and what it's all about. While I'm sharing my screen, let me quickly introduce me. I'm Stefan from Berlin. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I visited more than 40 hackathons during the last 4 years. And on 2 of them, I teamed up with Emily. And the last one was actually one that won us the finalist role on that ETH Online Hackathon, which was quite an amazing experience. And we actually took it away from there and built the Splice protocol. Let me very quickly show what this all looks like. We're very close to launching this one on mainnet. Everything's already deployed, but at the moment, this is better testable on Rinkeby, which is an Ethereum testnet. So imagine you are an NFT collector and you have collected lots of NFTs. And for example, this very nice dead fella here. And as Emily just said, what we're doing here, we're loading the NFT image from IPFS or from the origin. In Deadfeller's case, I think this is some kind of API server. And we're extracting the dominant colors of this NFT, which is very obviously orange in this case. And on the other hand, artists can create so-called style NFTs. They are created with generative code written in JavaScript, basically, which makes use of P5.js. And those NFTs, those style NFTs, are all, as I said, they're emitted as they contain code and some metadata. And once they are on their own contract, this front end reads those NFTs, those style NFTs, for example, this Emily has created, and executes the code using the primary colors we have extracted with some randomness that has also been extracted by the origin NFT. This is a little bit more details, but never mind. So once you find a style that you like, you can mint this one on your machine. You can express towards the smart contract that you want to own an NFT with that style. So let's just do that here. What you cannot see is my MetaMask going up. That only asks me to confirm this one. It might take a while. While we're waiting on this one to be minted, let me show what's going on under the hood. We have a little list here that's showing all the styles available. And I just click Crossroads, if I remember right. It'll show you how many of those styles already has been minted at the cap of that whole thing. And what's quite unique to the Splice protocol is that the minting fees and the royalties that are potentially occurring when those pieces are sold on the secondary market, they are splitted among several participants. And one of those is the current style owner. And this is quite a nice concept because the current style owner doesn't necessarily have to be the artist who created that style. So you can sell the code you have written to others and profit from minting fees and royalties without having to be necessarily the original author. So if I click the download button, you cannot see that there's another window going up, which is just showing me the PNG representation of that one. But that's basically it. This is how Splice works. It lets you generate new NFTs out of NFTs you already own, plus some style code that's an NFT itself. That's it from my side.
Awesome. Thank you a lot for the introduction. So can you share what was your motivation when you first come into the field? What was the main driver? What you didn't see in the world, which you wanted to change with your project?
I mean, one of the, this was a hackathon, right? So you have to come up with some cool idea. You want to win a prize. If you're lucky, you do so. But besides that, it's Emily and me, we teamed up for another project, I think in March. It was a half year before Splice, which has been called Entropy, which allowed you to create some building blocks as NFT that allowed you to create new things out of those building block NFTs. And this whole idea of, okay, if you have some value or you have several values and you create some new value out of that is something that in the NFT space more or less is called a derivative, right? Many people just do this uniquely with, I don't know, Mutant Apes or Ape Chemistry Club or something. So they're just creating new collections on top of the artworks of other NFTs. But in our case, it was more like, okay, maybe we could put some logic in there, like Art Blocks, for example, is doing. So use code to create something new. So everything on Splice is totally deterministic. And this is something that really like about this whole idea. And I think this was our main driver. What do you say, Emily?
I think you captured it pretty well. I actually think that partly seeing that Artblocks was sort of the only platform around and we could do something that was creative, almost like Web3 collage was sort of interesting. And also just empower generative artists in various ways.
I love it. And if you would to go and name one thing which is currently missing in the space, which you would love to see, but it's not yet there, or maybe not from an NFT perspective, but generally from Web3, give it a shot. I think our participants would be happy to have an additional point of view on what is the next thing which someone would love to have in the Web3 space.
Other than Splice? That's a good question. There's so many possibilities, right? I would think there's something interesting in doing more bridging between the gap of virtual and physical. I haven't seen a lot being done in that, and I think that's a whole sort of bridge that is worth exploring in various ways.
I remember that question from, I think it was Joseph on the chat, which said, okay, could you rent out an NFT to do something with that? And this is exactly one of the things that are currently not in Splice, but this is definitely possible. You cannot really rent something in that sense because you have to escrow it somehow, right? So if you give it to somebody, it's his. So you have to take care of that. And I think you can do lots of things with digital signatures to make this kind of use case happen. And I think I talked to lots of people in the NFT space who thought about that. And if you can make some kind of use case where you can like rent out an NFT so somebody else can make use of its utility and then give it back with some yield, maybe this is some awesome use case. Also fractionalization, of course, is definitely a big thing, but there are lots of protocols out there who already approach that. But yeah, everything in that space, I think absolutely makes sense.
Thank you. And as a last question, what would be your recommendation to any hackathon participant if you would participate in the next hackathon you by yourself? What's the one thing which you would look for in the hackathon?
Well, I'll be more curious about what Stefan has to say because he's done so many of them. But for me, I think the most important part about getting involved in a hackathon is just being open-minded to various people, meeting new people, working with new people, and really experimenting. That's, you know, I don't know how much you can do with that, but I guess it's sort of a state of mind.
Experimentation meets it pretty good. This is also what I would recommend everybody. So see maybe even the sponsors who are on this Faber hackathon, find their APIs, play with them, and just do dirty things with them because now you have the time because you decided to have the time. And what I also can recommend, if you start doing something, commit to it. Try to finalize that at all costs. It doesn't matter how bad it gets, right? The only thing that counts is that you create something that in the end at least works somehow. This is totally fine. And the other thing definitely is try to find nice people here. Try to team up with nice people that you might make a living with. How is it called in English anyway? So Emily and me, we grew quite good friends, and we met at hackathons. So it's definitely a good thing to meet new people here.
We've actually never met in person, so there you have it.
That's true.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's a great piece of advice for our participants. And I would again thank you, the Team Splice, for joining us today to share their experience with the hackathon. Thank you once again, guys. And we'll give the stage also to the QSTN team.
Hello, hello.
The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen now. Can everybody see my screen and the slides?
Yeah, all good.
Cool. So hello, everybody. My name is Orrin Campbell, and today I'll be presenting to you guys QSTN, which is pronounced question, and it's a blockchain solution to data monetization. So I guess as an intro, my name is Orrin Campbell. I graduated from NYU Stern back in 2017 with a degree in marketing. Between the years of 2017 to 2020, I worked in the entertainment industry. I went on Dr. Phil as a cyborg from the future. I got 20 million views. I built a large TikTok following, and I basically understood more about entertainment and consumption. As a cyborg from the future, I host a YouTube show where I interview different celebrities. I got a chance to talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson. We talked about social media. We talked about Facebook. We talked about Instagram, and that when you're using these social medias, it's free, but they're really going to be siphoning and taking your data. And so I thought, as a cyborg, how can I deliver on this promise to save people from the incoming apocalypse and save the world while also merging my love for blockchain and smart contracts? And so that was what led me to basically trying to create Question. This is a brief overview of the team. You have Anibal and Jose, who are twins. You have Eugene, who's our lead developer, and you have Ned Stasio, who's our art director. So the reason why we decided to create Question was because corporations are allowed to track steal, and monetize your personal information and web presence. This information is then sold back to you in the form of third-party ads. And it's estimated that by the age of 21, you've generated over $10,000 worth of profit for third-party marketers. So not only is this a breach of trust, but this is a breach of data. And these breaches of data are allowed due to poor data protection laws. On average, there are about 500,000 data breaches daily, with each instance taking around 228 days to be discovered. So this puts us, the consumer, at risk. And so what we're asking is that consumers should not only be paid for their data, but they should have the tools to help author its usage and its rights. And so what's the solution? The solution that we offered was Question. And again, Question is a blockchain-enabled market research portal where users answer questions, they earn credit for their input, and then they can spend these rewards for NFTs within our digital NFT marketplace. I'm gonna briefly stop the slides really quickly, just to give you guys a demo of the platform. I wish my computer would work. 1 second. For some reason, my computer is not cooperating with me. There we go. I'm going to give you guys a quick demo into Question. Here we go. So right now, what I'm going to show you is the centralized version of Question. We're building on the NEAR protocol, and I'm going to explain to you guys in the next slide why we're building on NEAR, but this is currently the centralized way to log in. So you have a username and a password, you sign in, those are the instructions. And so each day we ask you 5 questions. As you answer these questions, your balance will increase. So in the top left, you can see the balance was 45. As you answer the 5 questions, by the time upon completion, you should have 50 points. So using these points, eventually we'll populate our NFT store and you can purchase NFTs from our store using these credits. Right here, we're showing you an NFT that we're going to mint and that users can then buy on the front end. Again, we're setting the NFT ID and the metadata is going to be hosted on IPFS. Going back to the slides. Some of the reasons why we're going to be building this project on NEAR is because of the smart contracts. They're cheap and cost effective. The DAOs are a great support system. The NFTs have low minting fees, and you can engrave the metadata into the NEP token, something that NEAR or something that Ethereum doesn't allow yet. You have the Rainbow Bridge, so we can port assets such as NFTs or tokens from NEAR to Ethereum. And then NEAR is one of the first proof of stake climate neutral blockchains in existence. And so of course we want to limit our environmental impact if we're going to be doing thousands of microtransactions a day. And so where we are right now, we've received an initial grant from a DAO on NEAR. We're in the final stages of pitching from an official grant from the NEAR organization. We placed second in the ENCODE Bridge contest, and we're accepted into the 2022 Filecoin Accelerator program. And so looking into the future, we're going to finish and launch on the NEAR mainnet. We're going to throw a metaverse launch party, and we're going to try and turn the token into an actual, or the credit into an actual token, so that users can spend it on, decentralized exchanges and centralized exchanges outside of our system. And also, if anybody is interested, we're also going to be giving away some NFTs. So if you guys have a NEAR wallet, you guys can drop your NEAR wallet down in the comments and we'll airdrop you one of these NFTs. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you a lot for the presentation. I think it inspired many people to actually don't be shy and start developing something great on a hackathon.
Right.
Tell me more about your initial coming up with an idea. Why was it that make you go to the NFTs? Why you see the potential in Web3, and what is making you to wake up every day right now?
That's a good question. So as an artist, again, I told you that I'm a cyborg from the future. I went on television and I told people that I'm here to save the world. I realized that in the entertainment industry, you're just a product, and that the way that the current social media and internet structure is set up is Web 2. And so the people who create these structures benefit the most. I realized that I spent a lot of my time building up an online presence, but that I didn't actually own any of the things that I was putting out or creating, or even the tools of distribution. And so, back in 2018, I minted my first NFT. It sold for over 1 Ethereum back in 2020. And so that was when I really realized that, NFTs are going to stay, that there's, a lot of liquidity behind them, and that we can have different ways to also, tokenize value. When I got to the NEAR ecosystem, they kind of explained to me why NFTs on NEAR are superior, right? Because we have the proof of stake consensus model, their lack of environmental damage, and then your ability to engrave metadata into the tokens. What a lot of people don't realize is that NFTs on Ethereum, the metadata is platform specific. On Near, the metadata is engraved within the token. So it doesn't matter what marketplace that NFT is in, the metadata will still be there. And so that just led us on an entire journey. And so again, if users are going to be answering questions and receiving credits, we want to have different ways to show people the value of their data. And we think NFTs are a perfect way to do that. And as you guys can see, we have the question mark art. And so we're going to be dropping a generative collection. And so we want to give you guys that today.
Awesome. Can you maybe a little bit elaborate more on why it is important to own your data? Many people say right now, well, I don't care if Google steals my data or uses it. Where is the value in that? What's the ultimate form why you want to have a data on your own control?
I mean, like, data is a human right? Your data will say more about you than you'll actually say to a person in conversation. And so it's scary to think about the different companies and the different shareholders and people who know all this information about you, who are profiting from this information, and you have no clue where it is. You know, I could be in the States, I live in New York, and my information could be in China, it could be in Greece, and I wouldn't know. And people can abuse this information. They could even maybe collect your retina information and your vocal information and create some sort of AI. And then there's some copy of you out there without your permission because you signed the terms and conditions. And so we want to teach people that data is a human right and that you all generate value every day. We're all talking about universal basic incomes and different ways to support people, especially during a pandemic. And we believe Question will do that. Every day you answer 5 questions, you'll earn some credits, and then you can trade that for tokens or for different NFTs, and then teaching people the value of data that you generate often that's been stolen.
Thank you a lot for this elaboration. Also, one more question coming back to the hackathons. Why do you say, or what's the main opportunity of being a participant of a hackathon? I see that you also come from that journey, have an experience. What do you strive for when you are a member of a participant of a hackathon?
Well, what's beautiful about a hackathon is that, you know, we graduated from NYU in 2017. And so it had been, you know, we started our first hackathon and our first incubator last year. So from 2017 to 2020, we basically didn't have any schooling. And when we learned about hackathons and we learned about incubators, we learned that there are these communities where you can learn from professionals, people who do it every day, and you can also celebrate what you're learning with your classmates. And of course, there's the chances for cool prizes, but it's really just a sense of community. That's why we love Web3. That's why we love blockchain. So if you guys are here, feel free to reach out to us. My email address is here, and reach out to your classmates. You know, a lot of the people who are in your class probably worked for cool startups, are probably working on cool startups, and those could be some of your best integrations or partnerships moving forward. So just make friends, I think, and reach out to your teachers, and don't be scared to ask as well.
So if you summarize that in one single piece of advice for any hackathon participant, what that would be?
Make friends. Very simply put, make friends.
Awesome. I think there are a lot of friends and opportunities coming for the Faber Hackathon this time. And I also love your perspective that there are a lot of opportunities, not just from being part of a hackathon, but rather expanding it further after the hackathon, building an accelerator, joining the VC, investing, finding investment for a project, and then realize it on a full scale. I would again thank you for joining us today and sharing your experience. That was lovely to hear. The perspective of yours, and I hope that many participants were inspired by your journey. Thank you a lot once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure to talk with you. And on this stage, I think we are on the final line with the program for today. I think we don't expect any more speakers to come up. And that was a glimpse of what is possible in Web3 right now and what different opportunities that are awaiting you from inside participating in a hackathon and building in a Web3 community. I would give the stage right now to Carlos as we are coming into the end of this day, but it was a pleasure to have you here. It was a pleasure to see you from this, to inspire you during this day. And I believe there are many more opportunities coming with us through the Faber Hackathon. Thank you a lot, everyone.
Thank you, Konstantin. What an amazing day with a number of exceptional talks. I've certainly learned a lot. And I think this last panel was really kind of the right one to finish with the first day. I found it very rewarding and inspiring the fact that people talked about past hackathon winners. What they talk about is kind of having fun, experimenting, not being afraid to kind of be bold and build new things and going out there and just kind of make it happen. Because I think that's really the spirit that we want to see is people kind of trying out new things, trying to make an impact, and kind of not being afraid to experiment new things, and at the same time have fun and take the time to meet new people. So on that note, we're closing the sessions for today. I'll remind everyone that if you want to hang out and chat a little bit more, we'll be at Hackathon. So if you want to join Hackathon, I'll be there for a while longer, and a few others will also be there. And feel free to continue chatting after the end of these talks. Tomorrow we'll start at 10:30 a.m. GMT. I'll be sure to send some updates when the session is about to start. So that's it for today. Thank you, Konstantin, for your help during the day. And I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.